My name is Moon Petrie. If I seem a little distracted, I have a little distraction in my lap, and I am doing the writing style tag, which was originally by Katie Wilson. Question 1, what writing rule do you break knowing you need to correct it in revisions? So I have an over-reliance on M dashes and have at times just left way too many in and not always done them properly and had hyphen messes. I am not opposed to having some in the final product, but I definitely get carried away and have had to take lots and lots of them out. Question 2, what writing rule do you break and don't plan on fixing? So it's not really a rule, and I do try not to get carried away, but ellipses, I remember reading some Sarah J. Maas a couple years ago and feeling horrified by her over-reliance on ellipses. Mostly I love her writing and her books, but it just made me notice mine. So I try not to get that carried away, but I don't feel like I should have to eliminate them completely, so I don't. Question 3, how detailed do you get? What details do you think are important in your narrative, e.g. 5 senses? I am a little bit prone to white room syndrome and add details afterward for sure. As far as what details I'm inclined to remember to put in from the beginning, color is probably the one I reach for first, or the one that I notice in the world. And so what I don't tend to forget to put in. Other things are a little more of an effort. I have to stop and think about them. Unless I'm really trying to put myself into an emotional state or visualize something, I really, not just trying to get the words out as fast as possible, take some time to try to let an experience sink in with me in order to be able to write it better. Then I do a much better job of remembering more senses. Question 4, do you write flowery purple prose or to the point? I try to find a balance. I'm not super inclined toward the purple prose. I do, as I said, leave out setting descriptions too much, especially indoors. If it's outdoors, I tend to actually think about it, but if you're in a room, I'm just thinking, in a room, but I try to make sure that I use interesting descriptions when I do, that I'm even fast drafting, not relying on a cliche to describe something, but thinking about it in a fun way. It really helps to have lots of children because my children think of things in fresh new ways all the time. I remember when my third was maybe 2, suddenly looking at a fork and said, "Is this a food shovel?" So yeah, fresh eyes. The Buddhist child mind concept helps with that. But I definitely am not inclined toward too much pretty prose. Question 5, I thought was a great question. I had to really stop and think. Do your main characters across multiple works in progress have similar dialogue styles? Examples: funny, banter, introverted, talkative, standoffish. And I thought, no, definitely not. But they kind of are within a range. None of them are funny. for sure. I don't think of myself as funny, although I have funny side characters that I think are funny. So I'm capable of writing that, but I'm not capable of putting myself in that mindset. So I don't have any funny main characters. None of them are seriously extroverted, but I don't feel like they all have the same style. I definitely have one that's much more chatty, one that's super shut down, one that's quite gruff and thinks he knows everything. So decisive, not great at taking input. One who's much less sure of herself, but I don't have any serious outliers, which makes me think maybe that would be fun to try. Question 6, do you get voice right on the first draft? So I don't get all of it right, but I definitely get a feel for it in the first draft. I get it right in enough places that I then try to spread that out, try to carry that through in the places where it hasn't come through. Question 7, in the breeze, are you better at first or third person, present or past tense? What a great question, as I am trying to figure out what POV and tense I'm going to be using for my next project. So I only wrote in present tense once, and it was fun, and it didn't come out as bad as I was afraid it would. It was my first super fast drafting project. It didn't come out, I wasn't as happy with it overall as I have been with things that I've written in past tense. So I would say past tense comes more easily or goes more smoothly or something. But as far as POV, I haven't done a single POV that was in third person. I've done multiple POV in third person, and I felt like it was uneven for me how well I attached to or got across the characters. I wasn't able to equally do them justice. So I don't know. First person is easy to write fast. I don't know that necessarily makes it great, but I am going to be writing a thriller next. So I feel like I'll probably go first person on. I don't know. Very tempted to try a voicey, opinionated, omniscient third person narrator for that project, but that would be a stretch. Question 8. Do you pre-plan chapters or create chapters as you write? I don't know that a chapter is going to end until it does, I guess. I had one book that I wrote without any chapter breaks through it and went and imposed them later. That was kind of a disaster. And before that, I'd heard of people doing that. I was like, what do you mean? How do you not stop at the end of a chapter? So as far as dividing things into chapters, I've not planned ahead ever. I've either done it during or after. But as far as what's going to be in a chapter, as a pantser, even when I have done some planting, I have not been super clear on exactly what falls within a chapter. So just sort of hitting beats or plot points, and not specifically outlining a chapter. Question 9. Favorite tropes, ones you use or plan to across multiple books, and tropes you hate and never plan to use. So I would say on the whole, the evergreen trope for me would always be found family. I have used that across multiple books, and I think it's easy for me to reach for because it's comforting, because you can say, here we are in this messed up situation with, without your family of origin, and the comforting thing is who you're with and creating family with them. And then tropes I hate and never plan to use. There are so many. Anything that I could possibly flag as problematic, anything that rings as sexist, anything too sexual. I don't even write much in the way of romance subplots. They're very minor romance subplots in my books and not the main focus. And so, any of the traditional romance tropes, love triangles, hate to love. I don't read a ton of stuff that's heavy on the romance, although I do read some that has, obviously I'd mentioned Sarah J. Maas. Yeah, that one I'll try to avoid, the Stockholm Syndrome romance. Yeah. At any rate, it's not that I can't enjoy any of that stuff, but that as I'm not an enthusiast, I'm not poring over it and absorbing all the tiny details avidly. I don't think I would create it well. And question 10, do you have similar themes, mood, messages, or symbols across your books? And again, this question made me really stop and think. And yes, I do. So very, very clearly, one book is about honesty. And my other books have all had themes of, it's YA. I've only written YA so far. And so self-discovery is always going to be a major thread that weaves through YA. Funny little slurping noises going on here. But being able to be honest with yourself, holding on to stuff, and then letting it go, only after you have been able to really look it in the eye and name it. So being honest with yourself first, and yeah, honesty for sure, a major theme for me in my books. So I've really enjoyed this tag. It made me stop and think about things that I hadn't really before. And there's so many tags out there, and it is pretty easy to find one if you want to do one. But I do strongly recommend this one. So feel free to imagine that you are being tagged right now. The Writing Style tag by Katie Wilson, and I will have the link to the original and the questions in the description. So until next time, I am Moon Petrie, and do a tag. People have not been doing tags as much lately in AuthorTube, I think, so it's a ton of fun. Give it a shot.